should say record to cloud.
We're recording.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Hey, everybody. I am very happy to be here with you and that you have joined us today to talk about supporting online student success. This is one of the SUNY online teaching lunchtime webinars that we do periodically on a variety of topics. And so if today you are hoping to chat about, hear about supporting online student success, then you are in the right place. I'm here with my co-pilot, Rob Pierkowski, and he will be popping links in the chat as I talk through enable. Yes, okay, Robin, I got that enabled for you. As we talk through some of the strategies and for faculty to support online student success, some of the characteristics and profiles of online learners who are successful, to kind of understand both sides of the coin, and a little bit about the theory. You know, the main website, the main page for this session is the page that I currently have on. And Rob, if you could pop the link into the chat, or maybe I can do it. I think you need to be letting people in. So here is the link to this document, and it's just a website. So in general, you know, I think that there are a number of things that instructors can do to support online student success in their online or remote or blended, any format of technology enhanced instruction. There's a number of things to know and a number of things that you can do. So I have a list here, and I have some things highlighted. You know, being accessible to students is a very good strategy, making sure that they know and understand how to contact you and what your preferences are for interaction. That also assists with regular and substantive interaction, another webinar session that we recently did. So making sure that students know and understand how to access you is a very good way to support success if they have questions or need help or have to let you know some detail, helping them to know and understand how they can have access to the instructor is really important. In terms of some additional strategies that are more pedagogical in nature, you want to devise ways to help students reflect. Metacognitive journaling, for example, is a good approach, and helping them to understand what they're learning, how they know they're learning, so that they can help develop that sense of resilience and self-efficacy, making sure to hold students to high expectations, to articulate those expectations well is another good strategy. Making sure that you recognize and acknowledge learners' success and their efforts. So how you the language that you use and the words that you use to help support a growth mindset is super important. And we're going to talk in more detail, and I'll show you some resources on many of these things in a minute. And then, you know, believing in your students, that's sort of part of the whole growth mindset thing, is helping students to, you know, if you believe in them, to demonstrate that you believe in them, then that helps them to believe in themselves as well. You know, some of the things that I do, for example, that I have available are for faculty and for instructional designers that might be interested, would be to look through and think about how you are communicating with and interacting with your students, and getting a sense of who they are and where they are and what's going on with them at any given moment from a um, uh, you know, psychological perspective in some sense, right? So especially right now during a lot of the upheaval that a lot of us, that every one of us have gone through over the last couple of years, there are a lot of things that are going on in students' lives. And so helping to humanize and make sure that you are in attune to some of the complexities in the lives of students today is a really good way to help ensure that they can be successful. If you can't fix what you don't know about, you may not be able to fix it at all, but at least knowing about it will help you to understand, their learning through their perspective or what might be hindering their learning. Regular communications, we talked a little bit about already, how to access you, making sure all of that is clear. Adding some simple things like a basic needs statement to your syllabus is always or can be a good idea. And so these links, and you can mine any of these websites. These are public websites and pages that you can return to and take a look at in more detail. There's a lot of information here. I want to also show you an example of something that I do at the end of my online course when I was teaching it. And that is to get advice from current students for future students. So this is kind of like a way that I end my online course is I ask my current students to take a minute to provide some advice for my future students on how to be successful in the class. So it's just an idea. This is a simple Padlet, and I just pop a link to the Padlet and ask them to do that. And then I have this document at the start of the class when I teach it again. All right, so let's go back to this sort of overview of what you can do to support online learner success. And I think it's helpful to understand a little bit about the theory that underlies all of the suggestions and recommendations that we'll be talking about today. And it really has to do with self-regulated learning and the strategies that are used by online learners in order to be successful. And so I have the list here of the strategies and then how they're adapted by students or can be adapted by online students. So forethought and goal setting and performance and self-observation, these are, and then self-reflection down there at the bottom are all self-regulated learning strategies, and students who are successful demonstrate these adaptations, these behaviors. They'll log on regularly, they coordinate things, they plan, they problem solve, they might compose their contributions to the class offline. They might make sure that they have a fast connection and have contingency plans for if something goes south with their technology. They interact with their peers. They are motivated to do that to reduce some of the loneliness that some online learners experience. They check the grade book frequently to see how they're doing and take steps to address it if somehow or another they see that they are slipping. And they use their peers and the interaction that happens within the classroom that's produced by peers to help shape and guide their contributions. And then they also really focus on thinking about their learning, how they know they're learning. So they're already doing some of that metacognitive reflection activity to help them understand their own learning. Let me see. If we, so these are the main things that that an instructor can do to support the success of their online learners. So the way that I've organized this page is that there is sort of the learner side of the coin that talks about successful online learners do these things, and then some strategies. And then I have a section that talks about what faculty can do to support that same goal, that same aspect of self-regulation, learner self-regulation. So the first strategy is goal setting and planning. Good online learners who are successful online, like I said, do the daily logins, coordinate their work. They might leverage technology to assist them in time management, and really use the technology to help them with that goal setting and planning. So if you're an instructor, there are some things that you could do. So you might do announcements in your course and friendly reminders of things that are upcoming or that are due. You might create some sort of a tip of the day to support some of these goal setting strategies, some of these success strategies. You might create some community guidelines to help create and support a culture where learners are succeeding and helping each other and developing that growth mindset. So a couple of the strategies that I have as examples for you is, and I'm not saying that you have to do this. I send my students a love letter asking them to, what I would like them to do, and in some ways giving them permission, highlighting the things that I think are important for them to do and to know about at the start of the class, so that they can know that they can reach out. And then I also want them to know and understand me as a human being, and so I want to create that sort of humanized culture where we're all there to learn, and I'm there to help. So it's just one of my strategies to help the learners succeed, is to help them to know and understand at the outset some of the things that I think are important for them to know and do. So Remind, this was a tool that it's just an electronic sort of time management tool that can help an instructor develop and set automatic reminders to be released to students, to be sent to them via text. So if you are interested in exploring, a technical solution to assist you in that beyond what you have in the LMS, this is an interesting tool that I have seen used. All right, so we're in goal setting. Now let's move on to organizing and transforming instructional materials. So successful online learners will do things like highlight and have certain note-taking techniques that help them to manage and understand and collect their questions, their things that they want to know and remember, and they'll do that in a variety of ways. And there are some technical ways to do it. You can see right now that I have things highlighted on this page in yellow and in blue. This is how I annotate public web pages so that I can remember what I want to talk to you about in this webinar, and what I think is important on a particular website. And there's certain tools that you can use to do this. Zotero is one you might be familiar with, that allows for organizing and collecting citations and annotations on scholarly work, for example. I know there's a lot of uses for these tools, but this is one of them. Hypothesis is another one that is current, that a lot of folks are using, and this allows you to annotate the web, similarly to what I was showing you about highlighting things that are on public web pages. And this really allows you to collaborate, annotate, indicate things that are on public web pages. And this is a tool that you can use to do that. And maybe some of you are already using it. There are a lot of folks who are using this tool currently for a variety of purposes. So yes, often I'll get the question about accessibility. And so this is some information about accessibility at Hypothesis. They're really thinking that through. The tool that I mentioned that I use is called Digo. And it really is a social bookmarking tool that has these annotation features. Social bookmarking means, you can make a bookmark, or you can collect web pages that you find, and typically there's a bookmark that is associated with your browser. What this does is it takes the browser out of the equation, and you can create and manage and organize your saved bookmarks in this utility, in this tool. And then it doesn't matter what computer you're on, it doesn't matter what browser you're in, you will have access to them no matter what, because you've bookmarked them in this tool. And Digo is very rich, full of features, as is Hypothesis and Zotero for their specific purposes. I have a group that I've created in Digo for my online course, and then anything that gets posted to the course or that I want to share to the course. So anything that the students post to the course, anything that I do gets bookmarked and shared with this group. And so we begin building this annotated bibliography of resources over the course of the semester, so that the things that they do and share in the course don't go away. They don't lose access to them when their access to their course goes away. And we begin to build community around sharing resources with each other. And every student that I've ever had is a member of this group and can continue to share resources, not only with their own cohort of students, but with all of the students that have ever taken my class. So we begin to build community around the interest of online teaching and learning, which is my course's Introduction to Online Teaching. So we continue to interact beyond the end of the term.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
Eileen has a question about the cost of the tools.
Yeah, those Digo is free. I don't know about Hypothesis. Most of these tools will have a free version, and then there's a paid version where you can get access to some additional features. And that is the same, I believe, with Digo. There, you could pay for like a pro account, but I never have. I use Digo. I've used it for years and years, and I don't have a pro account for Digo. So I try to find tools and incorporate tools that I can use freely when I can. All right, so here's just a blog post that I wrote about why I love Digo and how I use Digo. And then I have created a resource if you are interested in understanding a little bit more about web annotation and social bookmarking. I have a resource here that talks about what it is, why I use it, and then I have a bunch of how-to stuff using Digo in particular, since that's the one that I use. But I also have the links to some additional tools and alternatives to Digo, in case you're interested. All right, so let's go on to Structuring the learning environment. This is another self-regulated learning strategy that we went over. And so successful online students will arrange their learning environment where they happen to be sitting to make their learning easier. And there's a number of strategies that that students can use. And by understanding what strategies successful online students use, faculty can help help students reinforce those strategies. Understanding what will help them, that structuring their environment is important, and being, understanding that and looking at your students with that particular lens, you can then make some suggestions or share some information with students to help reinforce that particular strategy. So some things that faculty could do would be to recommend or require, depending on your institutional context, that the students complete an online learning orientation. And another thing that you can do is not to make assumptions about your learners. And I know that's a simple comment, but and that's the challenge with assumptions, is that sometimes you don't know that you have them, but I'm trying to build an awareness, or by talking about this, to help you think through from the learner's perspective, so that you will question yourself to see whether or not what you're thinking is actually an assumption. And we saw a lot of those assumptions during the emergency COVID time, things that we all assumed, that we then very quickly learned, in fact, was not the case. And there's tons of examples, I think, that we all have experienced firsthand regarding that. So let me show you a couple of things in this area. I really like this. This is Penn State University. They have a really nice learning online set of materials here with a bunch of activities that students can do. You may have at your institution an online readiness or an online orientation resource that is your go-to institutionally, that's supported or whatever. Maybe you use something that SUNY Online has. But I like this resource, and so I wanted to share it with you all to be able to take a look at some of these resources and these activities here. I also have this really concise 7 ways to organize your study space, and this is written from the to the students, but I think it reinforces some of the main aspects of what a successful online student needs to do, and some of the assumptions, right? You would assume maybe that the students would find a quiet space for attending class, and the successful online students by and large do these things, but there may be circumstances for students that would prevent them from doing these things. And so having that understanding is one part of it. Or if it's possible that students may not know that you should really think about trying to find a space where you could go that is quieter, or more effective or more comfortable, or things about organizing your files or scheduling your time, or using technology to help you maintain some organization of your work and your materials, of having a routine, and of shoring up your support system to help you stay on task and answer questions or get support when you need it. So I like this resource. It put all of these really good suggestions in one place that are related to structuring your environment. All right, so let's move on to help seeking is the next self-regulated learning strategy. And So there's a number of things that successful online learners do, and around asking for help from instructors and also using their peers for support. So being aware of some of these behaviors or some of these activities that a successful online student would do to help themselves be successful is important. And then specifically what instructors can do, there's lots of things that instructors can do. So making sure that the expectations for the course are clear and explicit and consistent, and if there's any confusion, to make sure to correct that confusion if possible, to make sure that everybody understands due dates, how they're going to be evaluated, when to expect feedback, what the mechanisms are to contact the instructor and get assistance, or to get assistance from the student support services on the campus. All of those things are super important that the instructor can either design into their course or support and scaffold as the course is being instructed. We talked a little bit about humanizing the course in terms of the instruction and how things are presented. Helping students to be comfortable is an important aspect of the help seeking. If a student doesn't feel comfortable asking for help, they're not going to. If they don't know how to ask for help, they're not going to. If they don't know what mechanisms are in place for getting help, either at the course level or at the institutional level, they're not going to do that. And so that then thwarts them in terms of success. Having virtual or any kind of office hours, whether they're face-to-face or online or synchronous or asynchronous, but making sure that there's clear information on how students can set up appointments to talk about anything that they need to get help, to understand anything. Making that crystal clear to students is important. If you want, you can give them permission to help each other, and you can do that by creating a space or study groups for learners, and instructions that they should help each other if they can, and create some structure around that so that it facilitates them doing that. Many very well organized, successful online students will do that, will be motivated to do that themselves. But for some students, they just may not have the wherewithal or understanding that they could actually do that. And so one strategy for instructors could be to set up some spaces in their course with that expectation. Making sure they know how to get all the different types of help that are available to them is also another important strategy. So some of the resources I have for you for this section, for this self-regulated learning strategy, is to it has to do with assumptions and not making any assumptions about what your students know and what they may be up against. And so for those of you in community colleges or actually anyone, you will likely have had experience with first generation students, but really understanding the first gen student experience and the types of challenges that they experience that are different from any of the rest of us who have had support in terms of parents or family members who are familiar with how higher education works, who have higher education knowledge and degrees. The first gen students are at a disadvantage because they don't have that in their family. And so there are a number of challenges, including psychological challenges. Oh, I have a note here to myself. Let's see. They don't ask questions because they don't want to appear like they don't know, and they don't know how, when, or who to ask, or how to pronounce things even, or how to cite things. So this is the psychological challenges that they may be having. And you see that little highlight that I put there, that I did that with using Digo. That's a little sticky note I left for myself using the tool Digo. So I annotated this page with the highlights, and I put that little sticky note there to remind myself. They have academic challenges. Many arrive somewhat unprepared, they're overwhelmed, and they don't really have any kind of, support system that can help them. They give them support, hopefully, but they may not have the experiences to support them in that way. They're often there are often financial challenges. There are often social challenges. So I like this resource because it really, really has a lot of detail, but not, it's succinct, and it helps to understand things to explain things from the first gen college student perspective. I popped a query into Twitter. So if you're interested in learning more about some of the assumptions and perhaps, or some of the challenges that first gen students may have, I just did a simple search in Twitter, first generation student challenges, and then a whole bunch of stuff comes up. Oops. I just clicked on something. And I found it very interesting and instructive to go through this feed, this stream of information based on that query. There are a lot of first gen students here who are talking about their experiences that you can see, and that's always incredibly eye-opening to see. And then there are a number of institutions also that do a really great job of assisting and supporting first generation students. So I thought this was interesting to take a look at. If you use Twitter, you can take a look. Even if you don't use it, you can take a look. So that link you'll get that link in the chat. All right, so let's see. Self-monitoring and record keeping is the next SLR, self-regulated learning strategy, that students can practice if they regularly calculate and check their grades, if they either do that online or offline, if they're constantly monitoring and checking how they're doing, either checking in themselves with the grade book, or asking for feedback from instructors, or making sure to take a look at the feedback that the instructors provide. That's another thing that's an assumption, right? You assume that because you take the time to write detailed, rich feedback to students, maybe even do audio feedback and video feedback like I do, that the students are actually not only looking at that stuff, but actually absorbing it and making modifications to their behavior and to their course outputs, incorporating that feedback. Interestingly enough, if you check to see whether or not they have done that, you will see large percentages of students don't actually do that. And so successful students do, and then modify their behaviors. And so encouraging students, or designing activities where it's required, that they actually incorporate your feedback in another draft, for example, helps to scaffold students to actually look at the feedback that they're getting and reiterate, right? Iterate is what I mean. Have another try, and be able to get a modification to their grade as a result, right? So what faculty can do, the thing I have highlighted here is rubrics, is to create some rubrics to help learners self-monitor their contributions. There's a number of other things that one can do, but I wanted to focus in on rubrics, and I wanted to, as an example, share my discussion post grading rubric, just as an example. I'm not saying you have to do this. Sorry about my phone. But it's just an example, one example of a rubric that you can take a look at. And then I wanted to share with you a page that has a bunch of information about, I'm sorry about the phone, about authentic online assessment. So there's a lot of information here, and I can't really, I mean, I do a whole session just on authentic online assessment, and so does Rob. So there's a lot of curated resources here and things that you can take a look at your leisure. The things I have highlighted here relate to rubrics, and so I just want to encourage you to explore rubrics. If you have access to an instructional designer, I highly recommend that you talk with them about incorporating rubrics into your instruction and into learning more about how you might leverage rubrics to support online learner success, to help them understand how they can be successful, but also to make you and your provision of feedback and your assessment of student work more effective and more efficient, more objective. So rubrics are super cool. All right, let's look at the next one, which is self-reflection. And this is one of my favorite things. I've already talked about metacognitive journaling, but successful students in general and successful online students in particular will think about how they're learning, what helps or hinders their learning, how they can apply what they've learned in other contexts. And so there's a number of strategies that successful online students use in this particular strategy. So what faculty can do is there's a number of things, and you don't have to have your students keep a blog. You could do it internally to your course and have it be a journal, a private journal. You could have a discussion around what students are learning, what's helping or hindering, how they're going to apply it. You can have a discussion about that in the course. And there are a number of things that you can encourage your learners to do and interact with their peers for feedback and support, do peer evaluation and assessment, and then, encourage students so that they feel like they are succeeding. So some of the things that I pulled out to share with you is this really nice podcast by our friends from Oswego, Oneonta. John Kane at Oneonta does this Tea for Teaching podcast. And he had this really nice episode on Metacognitive Cafe online discussion forum that I thought you might be interested in this particular topic. So you'll get the link to that and be able to listen to it if you're interested in learning more about reflection and metacognition to support online learner success. I am posting some examples from my own instruction. I do have my students' blog, and I talk about, why I do that and just details about my objectives and the value that I think they get out of it, the value that I get out of it. And then there are examples. If you look on the right-hand side here, these are my student blogs. So you could actually go look at some of my student blogs from years ago, but some of them have continued to blog as a result of being in my course, which is always really cool to see. I have a web page that is kind of like, a recipe. I call it a recipe for actually incorporating metacognitive blogging into your online instruction. And so, this is really like a recipe card. You can follow, read about what I did or what I do and why I do it. And then there are some how-to resources so that if you want to give it a try, you can. And I've actually even posted the prompts that I give my students so that you can see examples of what types of questions you can ask. And you wouldn't have to even use this in a blog. You could, and not all of them, like I'm not saying do all of these. You could just look at them as examples and example prompts that you might select one of to try in your class at some point in your class. And, you would be best to decide when that is. But this is just an example from my course and that I wanted you to be able to have a look at to see. All right, let's go on to the
Alex,
next. Yeah.
Maureen's asking, does this take the place of discussions in the LMS?
The blog posting,
Yeah.
no, because it's a conversation with yourself, right? It's a self-reflection. So I do have my students read each other's blogs and comment on each other's blogs if they have a comment or a question. I also have them rate each other's blog postings against a rubric, but it does not take the place of discussion. It would be an additional activity. And that's because in my class, one of my learning objectives is to help students understand how to write for a public audience and in an academic context, right? That's one of my learning objectives. So this is one of the ways that I achieve that. You may not have that learning objective in your course, but the point of this, showing this in this self-regulated learning strategy of self-reflection, is that there's lots of different ways to get students to think about how they learn and how to incorporate what they learn about how they learn into their own learning, right? So, so it's just a recommendation for how an instructor, an online instructor, could incorporate some kind of self-reflection to address this self-regulated learning strategy in their own instruction, but not to take the place of online interaction between students. All right. So workload estimator. So this topic here is about self-efficacy, building up an understanding of what self-efficacy is in students, how to recognize it in students, how to support it in students. And here are a number of ways. Well, I have a list of things that online learners worry about and a number of strategies that they use in order to address this strategy. And then a number of things that an online instructor can do to create a supportive online learning environment for them. So the thrust behind self-efficacy is that students who have it believe that they can be successful in their online learning or in their learning. Self-efficacy is not specific to online learning, but it is that sense of belief that you can succeed, that you're competent, that you will be successful. And so an instructor can support learners feeling that they can be successful in an online learning environment in a variety of ways. And so some of the ones that I've highlighted are you can model certain behaviors. There's lots of different things you can model in an online course. So, and whatever it is that you do, the students will use that as a model, will take that as a model, and will replicate it. So if you end your discussion posts in a question, which is a really good practice, then the learners will, observe that and they will do it too. If you title your discussion posts with a good contextual title instead of whatever the random default is that comes up when you hit reply, then your learners will do that too. So there's lots of things that you can model to help learners believe in themselves and that they can do that. If you are resilient yourself in the face of technology issues, that demonstrates to them that behavior, that attitude, and then they will adopt that as well. Never underestimate your power to help students believe in themselves and think that they can do things. Clear instructions, again, becomes a really important part of this. So let me show you some resources. This is the workload estimator that I really want you to see and take a look at, and Rob will pop the link in the chat for you. This will help you understand, how much work you are designing and how much work the students are doing. So that's what I had in this particular area for as an example. I think this strategy of goal orientation is important. One of the self-regulated learning strategies that we've talked about a little bit already is supporting a growth mindset, and what faculty can do to create learners' positive approach to their own learning and thinking about things in terms of how it applies, how things apply in your course to their real life, and to what they have to focus on, and what their effort means. So that whole notion of growth mindset comes into play here, and is super important. I have a couple of resources to share with you on this. I found this infographic that I thought was really good, not in terms of the graphic design, but in terms of what it was actually saying to explain strategies to foster growth mindset. So, it's just there for your information in case you want to take a look at it and think about some of the things that it's highlighting, how you give praise and praising effort rather than, the student or the product. Here was another resource I really liked that it really just lists out 25 ways to develop growth mindset. And again, I think if the instructor develops that understanding and that lens, then you can see how you might adapt things in your course to scaffold and support this notion of growth mindset in your materials, in your interactions, in your feedback, and so forth. And then I like this one too, because it talked about the key differences between fixed and growth mindset, and the three that they've outlined here are effort, challenge, and sort of the attitude towards mistakes and feedback. And I find this one incredibly interesting, that you really have to help students. They come in with fixed mindset. And they don't want to iterate. They want to know what they have to do and do it and then move on. And so you have to sort of help break them of that and teach them how to iterate, how creating a draft and getting feedback either from the instructor or from the peers, and improving things, how that is the stuff of learning, not the grade that they get on the one paper that they do, right? It takes a minute for them to get their heads around. My students are graduate students, and it is a challenge for them to understand that and to accept it. And some of them really don't like it. So another thing in this category is supporting access, equity, and equality. And so I have a number of resources here, again, to help lift awareness, lift assumptions, and clarify some of the issues that may not be sort of intuited or right there at your fingertips of your consciousness. There are so many things that one can do to support equity, equality, diversity, and access. And the reason that it's in this supporting student success is because for those students who feel marginalized, who don't feel seen or heard, these are some of the things that you can bring to your attention to help. Learning to pronounce their names, for example, is one way. Using their preferred names and pronouns is another way. You cannot imagine how far those simple things can go to help a student feel comfortable and able and ready to learn in your class. If you are essentially welcoming them by doing those small things, very small things. All right, so let's go to the next one. Oh, I think I'm done. Those are all the self-regulated learning strategies I wanted to share with you. This is the resource again. I want to, thank everyone for joining. We're at time, but I'm happy to stay here and answer any questions that anyone may have. I do want to mention that we have links to this. This has been recorded, and it will be posted here on this playlist as soon as we are able, and the links to the past presentations are posted here. I want to invite anyone here to join our new networking networking, online networking community, which is now in Facebook. And so if you're in Facebook and would like to join, I would really like to invite you to come continue this conversation online with us. I want to make sure that you, if you are, whether you're in SUNY or not in SUNY, you are welcome to join our online community as a fellow in your selected role. So if you're in SUNY, you could pick from any of these. If you're not in SUNY, you would join as a friend of SUNY. And then it's just, you know, me and Aaron and Rob and Willow behind all of this. And so it just gives us an ability to send you a note when we do a webinar like this, for example. And you may already be part of that, but I just want to mention for anyone who may not. And then I wanted to share some discipline-specific resources if you're an instructional designer or if you're faculty and you're interested in some of the resources that we collect that are discipline specific. I thought this might be a cool place to mention it. And we have these collaborative documents in all of these disciplines where you can share with us some of your tools and some of your things that are specific to these varied disciplines. And again, here is the resource for supporting online student success. And I am very happy to have spent this lunchtime with you. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing and see if anyone has a question. Rob, was there anything in the chat that that you want to bring up? Oh, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, just this last slide, the closing slide.
Yeah, so our next one will be, when is it? In May, implementing an online course quality review and refresh process with Oscar. I have never done this session in SUNY, and I'm going to be doing it at CIT also, but I wanted to give like a preview and an overview of how to do a larger scale online course quality initiative. So that's what's going to be in May. So hope you'll join us for that. If you're not familiar with Oscar, you'll learn a little bit about Oscar. It's not a how to use Oscar or how to do a course review. It's really intended for someone kind of at the director level or the ID level that is running larger scale online course review and refreshes on your campus, and this will help you build an implementation plan to do that well. So any questions from anyone?